Colts Nation, if helmets or helmet accessories interest you, make sure to go to greengridiron.com and use code INDSYN at checkout to get the discount code with it. Whether it's mini helmets, full-size helmets, visors, clips, whatever it may be, different face masks, different variations of helmets, alternate helmets, whatever the case, you can get it at Green Gridiron. And again, that's code INDSYN at checkout for the discount. Thanks for stopping by for another video, and now let's get into it. What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you joining me for another video where today we're going to talk a little bit about something that I saw my guy Trey over on Viking Syndicate talk about. I was scrolling through my subscription feed, and I saw a thumbnail with DeForest Buckner on it, and of course, talking about a possible trade from Indianapolis to Minnesota. And where this comes from, as I was watching this video, it was a Bleacher Report, Bleacher Report. It was something they put out, kind of like a prediction for what they would expect to happen or what they think should happen, right? Just an early offseason talking point. And as I was sitting there watching it, he made the case of why that wouldn't be a good idea, right? Like, it's, of course, an interesting prospect because that's something they need, is somebody to put on the inside with Harrison Phillips, but they only have 4 upcoming draft picks, or 4 draft picks in the upcoming draft. And because of that, they don't really have assets to really give away like that. Now, they do have the money. They have $61 million in cap space. So here's what I'm thinking, okay? As I started looking into this situation, you look at what DeForest is making, you look at different, cut scenarios or trade scenarios. Of course, you're not going to cut DeForest Buckner, but trade scenarios, our cap space, their cap space. What can we do this offseason? And at the end of the day, of course, this is where we start. I am not saying we should trade DeForest Buckner. I am not going. That's not what this conversation is. That's not something that I would even entertain. But I think situations are situational. And I think that phrase will continue to hold true. And in this situation, I think this is, again, a massive year for the Colts and what our future looks like. And are the same coaches and GM going to be here? Right? Things aren't going well throughout the season. I think there's a chance. Now, the Bleacher Report thing, they were talking about doing this in the offseason. And the hypothetical trade proposal that they ended up with it says, hypothetical trade we'd love to see 2025 third round pick, which would be 97 overall, and a 2025 fifth round pick, which would be number 161 overall, for DeForest Buckner, a fifth round pick, and a sixth round pick. And in my opinion, you just look at the trade capital coming back. A 2025 third, it's just for DeForest Buckner. I understand his age and how much money he's making, but boy, that is a terrible trade. There's a 0% chance I would ever be okay with something like that if that were to happen. Like, if you're giving away DeForest Buckner, we got DeForest Buckner for a first-round pick, a single first-round pick, but nonetheless a first-round pick. And just because he's gotten older doesn't mean a whole lot. Obviously, his production's gone down a little bit. Injuries have definitely taken their toll on him, and they did this season. That was a big reason for his lack of production, right? Because of the injuries that he sustained this season. And he still comes out with 6.5 sacks by the end of the season, looking like himself again. And I think in this Lou Anarumo defense, he could be a massive piece of what we're going to do on the defensive side of the football. And I think if our defense is better this year, overall, the team will be better, because I think Anthony's going to get better throughout this offseason and come into 2025 better. So I have high hopes for a 2025 season. I think Bleacher Report is out of their mind. I think Trey had a good take on it, right? Of course, it would be nice to have DeForest Buckner, pair him up with the defense they just had, like drastic improvement under Brian Flores. I believe I heard Trey say that they were the fifth lowest scoring defense in the NFL this season. Just a massive improvement for where the Vikings have been defensively defensively over the last few years, right? Trying to find an identity, a lot of young pieces, a lot of guys that left and guys that had injuries, right? Different circumstances for the Vikings. This defense has just been disappointing. And this year, much different tune, where again, they were the fifth best scoring defense in the NFL. So I think, of course, adding DeForest Buckner would be great for the Vikings, but I just think especially when you look at the trade proposal that Bleacher Report had, like, it doesn't make any sense. And the only way it makes sense is if the Colts, our season isn't going well, and 2025 is looking like a wash, and Anthony's not developing overall, offensively, defensively, just not doing it. Chris Ballard didn't build the roster the way he should have throughout the offseason. We once again disappoint, right? If we get to that point, we get to a trade deadline, okay? And this is why I think it's a big deal from one to the other, whether it's post June 1st or pre-June 1st. The dead money you take on trading DeForest Buckner is $14.4 million, and the cap savings is $12.2. So you have $14.4 million added in dead money for 2025 season, and you're not getting DeForest Buckner in the middle of your defense, which has been your best defensive lineman since the day you traded for him. So that just overall terrible, especially when you look at the flip side, right? If things aren't going well, we're getting to a spot where, 2026, no guaranteed money for DeForest Buckner. He has $23 million guaranteed this year, but no guaranteed money, and then 2 years voided on the back end. So we're getting to a point where the contract is set up in a way where, hey, if things aren't going well, we have options. So trade post June 1st. This is why trading him in the offseason, not an option. If we're not doing well in 2025, that's when I think DeForest Buckner would be in a position where, hey, let me go somewhere where I can win. Let me go somewhere where I can try to contend and I can sign a new contract, going forward, because he has no guaranteed money. That's something that he's going to be looking for if he goes to a new team. So, again, there's no way I would ever want to trade DeForest Buckner like that. That's not an option. But if things aren't going well, then you have to start thinking about the future. And that would be, when you think about our future and cap savings and what kind of draft capital could you get for DeForest Buckner? I guess waiting, you're probably not going to get so much. But the way it sits, that's just how I feel for this situation. And I thought, once I saw this, I was like, oh, well, I have to see what's going on here, and I have to talk about it with you guys, and that we're going to have to discuss it before we go forward. The next conversation that we're going to have, what the plan was for today, was to talk about interior defensive line. How do we get better at that position? Where do we get our depth? Do we go in free agency and try to get depth? Do we, obviously, releasing a guy like Raekwon Davis could open up a little cap space for us, and do we go in the draft? This is supposed to be a good draft for interior defensive linemen. Like, there's some conversation to be had there, so we're going to do that. But this had to be talked about. So just know that that's an option, and that's why, leading into the conversation that we're going to have to tomorrow is going to be the fact that if at some point, things don't turn around and we're going in a position where DeForest Buckner could ask for a trade, if things aren't going well, then in my opinion, draft going to be pretty important for us this year with the interior defensive linemen. So we'll see what happens there. But in my opinion, this is what I'm thinking on this. Don't ever want to trade DeForest Buckner. He should retire at Colt. But circumstances, again, situations are situational. Just wanted to go through with you guys a report that I had seen again, and shout out to Viking Syndicate. Go over, see what he had to say about this, and hear what his opinion was over there. Again, that is Viking Syndicate. His name is Trey. Great guy and puts out great content. So with that said, make sure you subscribe with notifications on so you continue to get notified anytime we have any more content dropping on this channel. And of course, I appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.